people looking for generic businesses that are owner absentee. So one thing is to be rather specific in your search. So when you're first starting to look for businesses, it's okay to browse websites like our website, tworld.com or Biz by Sell, and just kind of window shop and figure out what industries you want to be in, what size company. But when you start engaging with a broker, be specific in your search. It's just kind of like your marketing message, right? If you're saying that your company can sell anything to anyone, you're not very memorable. And if you're talking to a broker who talks to hundreds of buyers every week, and you're saying, I'm just shopping for this generic thing, you're not very memorable. Versus I'm shopping for an electrical contractor in Columbus, Ohio that does between $1 and $5 million in revenue. When that broker comes across that deal, he's going to immediately think of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing. The other thing is to not expect to get all of the information up front. And I think some of my colleagues have trained buyers inappropriately, but this is a give and take relationship, right? So like we said, most of our sellers want to ensure that the next person that buys the business is qualified and going to take care of them, and take care of the business. So there's going to be a little bit of give of information to the buyer, but then like there's a little take, right? You'll be asked to sign an NDA. You're going to be asked for a proof of funds and, a personal financial statement. There's just a certain give and take. Don't be expected just to be handed like the kings to the kingdom or, the secret sauce right from the bat. So I think that's some of the mistakes that buyers do make. And then just a little bit of flexibility. It's a negotiation. Ultimately, my husband, who's my business partner, always says like no deal's done unless, either party's, a little bit sour that they didn't get exactly their own way. Right. Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for having me back. I enjoyed myself so much last time I had to come back. But big news today is my book, Getting the Most for Selling Your Business, launched today on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, all the major sellers. So big news, big book for people that are interested in selling a business, but also on the buy side, right? Of getting able to pull the curtain back and see what goes on in this marketplace.
Yeah. No, really interesting stuff. So, what would you say, like what stage would your book be written for? Right. So it's written for people that are looking to sell their business. At what point would you suggest them to read this? What types of things should they have in place? What types of things should they be thinking about when they pick up the book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, if you are in the process of selling, you probably need this book at least 6 months in advance, but it's never a bad guide to have when you're any stage in business. So maybe like even you're thinking about starting or buying a business, it provides just insights on how value is created in the exit of a business, right? So if you're able to structure your business ahead of time for sale, one, it protects you if anything ever happens, unfortunately, in your life that you need to sell, right? Or you can just design it for long term. And essentially, and we talked a little about this on the show last time, valuation and business value is all driven by profit. So essentially, the book is about running an efficient and profitable business.
Yep. And would you say that this helps you value your company as well and figure out what you should be asking for it, or at least put you on the lines of figuring out what the property or the company should be worth?
Yeah, we talk a little bit about valuation. We don't get into methodology or actual multiples on there. But what the thing we do talk about is that, valuation is based on a multiple of your earnings. And that can be a variety or it can be a range depending on your industry and size of company. But the book is really about how to move you to the upper end of that range. So say businesses in HVAC are trading between 2 and 5 times earnings. What makes the difference between a 2 times multiple business and a 5 times multiple business? That's really what this book is about, is like, how do you move that multiple? We all know that if we want to grow our earnings, we can grow our revenue, we can shrink our expenses, but it's how do you build those qualitative factors that business buyers really want? That's what I'm talking about throughout the book.
Yeah, interesting. And what would you say are, just a brief snippet, what are some of those things that you can do to move that needle, toward the higher end?
Yeah. So it's all about risk, right? So for buyers, they're evaluating all the companies that they're looking at in terms of how much risk am I taking with this acquisition? So it's about reducing risk. So there's three main ways that you can do that. And this is kind of the beginning part of what we address in the book. But first is you want to attract as many buyers as you want. Just like our basic supply and demand economics 101, you want to have different options and different marketplaces that you're shopping your business to and get as many buyers to compete for your business as possible. If that happens, it'll drive the price up.
Yeah.
The second way is financial records. So you have to have clean financial records going into a sale. And that means your profit and loss, your balance statement, tax returns, and usually about 3 years of history is going to be the most beneficial for you. And then the last that I talk about is something in the business brokerage world that we call owner absentee businesses. But it's basically getting yourself out of the operator seat of the business. So you don't have a day-to-day job. You're just managing the business. You're wearing that CEO hat instead of doing day-to-day. And the more you can move to that owner absentee or CEO model, the higher multiple and the higher price point you're going to get for the business.
And I would imagine that, all of that side of things is setting up the actual systems and processes that are replicatable, you can plug people into those types of systems, and they can follow that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot about processes and systems. There's also I go through what's the best roles to get out of first, because obviously we can't just walk into our business one day and tell ourselves hey, I'm not going to work in my role anymore, right?
Yeah.
So how do you strategically get out of the most valuable roles first? Documenting processes and systems, usually in whatever role you're doing, is the first thing you want to do, because you're going to be the one that's replaced first. And then you can have your team members help with their roles as well. So yeah, processes and systems are covered in the book. That's a really big one as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So, it sounds like you packed a lot of information into the book. Do you have any concerns? And actually, this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. Do you have any concerns about, basically giving away too much information that they're not going to need you anymore? And I think that that's a problem that a lot of people struggle with when they're sharing their information, sharing their knowledge. So I'm curious how you approach that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And from, an exit strategy and consulting standpoint, it's really a teaser to our prep to sell program. And really what I find with that program is that people don't need the information as much as they need outside eyes and accountability, right? And I struggle with that too as a business owner. And from the business brokerage perspective, most of the business brokers are really supportive of this launch. I've got some quotations and testimonials from the head of the IBBA, from the president of Biz Buy Sell. And it's really, as an industry, everything we wish our sellers knew so that it can make us more effective in our jobs, get them, more buyers for their business, get them more money for their business, and hopefully sell it faster too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense. So sort of a prep checklist, if you will, to be able to, be in a better position to be able to talk to either yourself or another broker or what have you. So no, that makes perfect sense. So it's been, I don't know, probably 6 months or so since we've talked, maybe a little bit more. The market has been, completely, crazy, all kinds of things going on in everyone's world today. What are you seeing as far as, the buying and sell mergers and acquisitions, type industry? What, how has it been impacted with everything going on today?
Yeah, it was really interesting because when the pandemic first started, like everyone else, we had no idea how our industry would handle it. And quite honestly, I was like, wow, I think we're done for a while. I don't think people are going to be buying businesses. And it started to take off. And first, it was about some of the incentives that the SBA was giving away, some of the payment forgiveness for the first 6 months and some waived fees, things like that. And then when this whole, what they're calling the Great Resignation started, we started getting a flood of buyers. So it was interesting going into the pandemic. One of the biggest concerns for the brokerage community was that 55 to 60% of all small businesses are owned by the baby boomers. And they're on the retirement horizon, right?
Yeah.
So we know they're getting ready to sell. So, and on the other side, millennials really weren't engaging in entrepreneurship. They were more on that corporate track. So we were expecting this flood of sellers and not having enough buyers in the marketplace. Well, the pandemic switched that whole thing because the millennials got a taste of working from home and flexible schedules and being on their own. And then returning to those corporate environments became less desirable, which started that thing that everyone's calling the Great Resignation, right?
Yeah.
that increased our buyer pool about 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we had this flood of buyers come to the marketplace. At the same time, we had the sellers come to the marketplace. So it solved that buyer gap. And actually it created a very favorable market for sellers. So it's a very, very favorable market for sellers right now, where we have a ton of buyers. There's still a ton of money available through the SBA. So, and through different lenders. So it's been a wild ride. I mean, there's been a lot of transactions done. We're actually up year over year and have been for the last 2 years, and it just keeps going.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have never thought that was, obviously I'm suffering through the great resignation, right? I can't find employees, and I would have never
Yeah.
thought that, everyone decided that they were going to go and open up their own business. And that was, where a lot of them went. Do you see any popular industries, would you say, that are, again, sort of standout-ish? We talked right before we jumped on here about the, the quote unquote boring businesses, the car washes and, those types of things. Are there any businesses that you would say are, sort of stand out in today's market, or sort of sought after by a lot of buyers?
Yeah, there's definitely been some more interest in the boring businesses, like the businesses, the industries that have been around for hundreds of years. And as we talked about before, we do a lot of work in constructions and trades, and that's continue to be a strong market. It's not really specific industries, but things or qualities of businesses that buyers continue to look for. So I don't know how many emails I get every day. It's like, hey, I'm looking for an owner absentee business that has recurring revenue and cash flows over $250,000. Like every buyer is looking for that. And I think especially the owner absentee thing, where somebody can come in and just wear that CEO hat, has become even more desirable. If we bring a business to market like that, it sells relatively quickly, and there's usually a bidding war going into it.
Yeah. Interesting. And what types of, I guess, qualifications would you say that someone might need to have if you're thinking about buying a business, right? Obviously, like you said, there's places where you can get loans from, and, if you've got the down payment, you can qualify from that standpoint. But what type of prep would a up and coming business owner, someone who's making a purchase, what types of things should they know about?
Yeah, and it's really a great question in this competitive market, especially if you're trying to buy a business that is in a popular industry or one of the ones we just talked about that is very competitive. You can set yourself apart. So most of these companies, like I said, are owned by baby boomers, or some Gen Xers starting to sell, and legacy is really important to them. So just like when you're trying to bid on a house, sometimes there's certain things you can do to set yourself outside of the crowd. There is the same thing with the businesses. So you can go and get a pre-qualification for your bank. The bank will still tell you like, hey, I need to see the business first, but they can give you like a little letter, like pre-qualification letter, saying like, hey, we're already working together and we would definitely finance Matt in this transaction. That's going to help a lot. Being able to provide proof of funds is very important. So if you're going to try and do a cash down payment or buy a business for cash, proof of funds is extremely important and will set you outside of the crowd. The other thing, I think having your story right. So there is, and oftentimes, and this is not everyone, right? We always have like stereotypes of different types of consumers out there, but there are certain business buyers that will come in almost in an insulting manner to the sellers. And like I just said, they're very proud. Legacy is very important. So coming in about, why do you want to buy this business? And offering some compliments and regards for what they've built and what they've been through the interview process, that's going to be really important. I mean, I can't tell you how many sellers we've had that will turn down higher offers just because they don't like the buyer. It's really about this short-term marriage. So coming in and doing some research on your own on the company, being able to compliment that seller when you do get a chance to meet, and having a story about why you want their company and what you see for its future, that'll be really important to the seller.
Yeah, I think that's a dynamic that maybe not a lot of people necessarily think about, that you think, oh, I'm going to buy your business, sell it to me, right? And they think that that's kind of like a one-way transaction, but you have to pitch yourself and make yourself seem appealing to the other party as well, which, like I said, I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize that that's part of the transaction.
Yeah. And you have to think, I mean, most of the companies that are for sale are founder-based companies, which means the seller that's selling the company is the founder, right? And
Mhm.
most of these founders, and I find myself in the situation too, and I use this metaphor in the book a lot, is we find identifying the business as our baby, right? And it's whether it's a love-hate relationship
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, even my first business I sold was a wine business. And I followed what happened with that business for 5, 7 years before they ended up closing about 8 years later. And I mean, I didn't like that business anymore 5 years later. Like I had
Yeah.
no desire to go buy it back, but I still cared what happened.
Yeah.
And most of these sellers, it is their baby and they are going to care a lot. Like, yes, there's a financial part of the transaction to it, but they also want to make sure like what they built will continue to survive. The people that they've worked with for sometimes 5, 10, 40 years are well
Mhm.
taken care of. They need to have that trust in the next person that's going to run the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. As you were telling that story, it kind of shot me back. Like even I used to be an electrical contractor years ago, but I still drive by, buildings and houses and that we did electrical work in. And some of my energy went into, putting things in there. And it's just, it's a cool feeling knowing that, you had a small impact. And in this case, a huge impact in, building something. So no, it
Right.
makes perfect sense. What types of things, what are some of the mistakes that you see, people making when they approach when they're looking to buy a business, we went through the things that they should do. What types of things should they not be doing, I guess stand out or even qualify for the bank, anything like that? What things should they not be doing?
Yeah, I think one big thing is I joked a little bit earlier that I get a million emails a day about people looking for generic businesses that are owner absentee. So one thing is to be rather specific in your search. So when you're first starting to look for businesses, it's okay to browse websites like our website, tworld.com or Biz by Sell, and just kind of window shop and figure out what industries you want to be in, what size company. But when you start engaging with a broker, be specific in your search. It's just kind of like your marketing message, right? If
Mhm.
you're saying that your company can sell anything to anyone, you're not very memorable. And if you're talking to a broker who talks to hundreds of buyers every week, and you're saying, I'm just shopping for this generic thing, you're not very memorable.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm shopping for an electrical contractor in Columbus, Ohio that does between $1 and $5 million in revenue. When that broker comes across that deal, he's going to immediately think
Think
of
of
you,
you. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing. The other thing is to not expect to get all of the information up front. And I think some of my colleagues have trained buyers inappropriately, but this is a give and take relationship, right? So, like we said, most of our sellers want to ensure that the next person that buys the business is qualified and going to take care of them
Mhm.
and take care of the business. So there's going to be a little bit of give of information to the buyer, but then like there's a little take, right? You'll be asked to sign an NDA. You're going to be asked for a proof of funds and a personal financial statement. There's just a certain give and take. Don't be expected just to be handed like the kings to the kingdom or the secret sauce
Yeah. Yep.
right from the bat. So I think that's some of the mistakes that buyers do make. Yeah, and then just a little bit of flexibility. It's a negotiation. Ultimately, my husband, who's my business partner, always says like no deal's done unless either party's a little bit sour that they didn't get exactly their own
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it. Actually, that's a perfect perspective, to keep things, in perspective, because I think again, a lot of people go in and feel like, oh, I've got to get everything that I want. And at some point that might even, derail the entire thing. So, you went in too hard nosed and too, strict on what it was that you're looking for. And, that little bit of give and take, sometimes makes all the difference. So.
Yeah, it's actually on the sell side, something we talk about a lot. Is I'll say, what's your most important outcome? Because you could really only have one, right? You
Mhm.
can get the most money that you want for the business. You could have the best legacy possible for the business, right? And have it
Mhm.
in the best hands. Or sometimes it's different than price, as you can walk away with the most cash in your pocket. But you can't really get all three. You're not going to win on all three. That's like unlikely, right? It happens in, once in a blue moon type deals. Because ideally, right, if we wanted the best legacy for the company, we'd probably sell it to our top employees or people that have been with the company for a long time. But often they can't afford to pay us the best financial price, or we're going to have to finance that over years, which affects the cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing on the buy side. Like, what's your most important outcome, right?
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more. You actually kind of reminded me of another philosophy that I actually teach, our employees as well. And I can't, there's a name for this, but basically it's a circle, and there's price is in one quadrant, time is in the other, and quality is in the other, right?
Right.
And so many owners, they want all three, but it's been technically proven that there's no way that you can have all three. You can only have as many of two of them. So which one are you going to give up in order to be able to have the third one? So,
Right.
So yeah, makes perfect sense. So yeah, Jessica, this is really, really cool, really exciting. So happy that you wrote the book. I'm actually going to read it too, because as I've mentioned, I want to get into some of these, purchasing of different companies and whatnot. So I will be ordering this later on today as well. But if people want to learn more, about the book or your services, what would be the best way to reach out and get in touch, or again, learn more?
Yeah, you can reach me at our website, which is exitfactor.com. The book's available for sale at /book. But you can also find it on Amazon by searching Getting the Most for Selling Your Business as well.
Excellent. I love it. Jessica, thanks for the time, and good luck with the launch. This is really cool. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you having me on the show.
No problem.